All right, Biology 11. This is the first of two lectures that we are going to have on the circulatory system. All right, so one important thing to note, both lectures are going to be from the same PowerPoint lecture note that you have on your D2L site. All right, so I'm going to be using this today and tomorrow. I'm going to do the first half today, and then we'll do the second half tomorrow. All right, now the three systems that we cover in this unit are the digestive system, the respiratory system, and of course today's topic, the circulatory system. How do they relate to each other? What's the connection there? Well, it comes down to energy, and cellular energy is called ATP, right? ATP is what fuels our cells and allows our cells, all 100 trillion of them, to do the various things they have to do in order for us, being made of cells, to function. All right, so in the green here we have fuel coming into the body. Well, we know we get our fuel from foods. And so unlocking those nutrients and beneficial molecules from food and putting them into the blood, that's the job of the digestive system. And when it comes to ATP, our body's first choice of fuel is glucose, right? It's a sugar, a carbohydrate. The respiratory system, we know, allows us to take oxygen from the atmosphere around us and put it into our blood using our lungs. So that's the second system. Oxygen is the second ingredient, along with glucose, that we use to make ATP. Now there's only two ingredients, and we're talking about three systems. So what is the ingredient of the circulatory system? Well, the circulatory system, it doesn't have an ingredient that it brings into the body like the digestive system and like the respiratory system, but what it does is it delivers these vital substances to the 100 trillion cells that make us up. So if you think about it, the job of the digestive system was to take nutrients and absorb them through the wall of the small intestine into the blood. The respiratory system, it takes in the oxygen from the atmosphere and dumps it into the blood. Neither of these systems delivers it to the cells. That delivery is done through the circulation of blood, and that's why the circulatory system is key. All right, so digestive puts glucose in the blood, respiratory puts oxygen in the blood, the circulatory system delivers it to the cells, and once these ingredients are in the cells, we know they are going to the mitochondrion, and the mitochondrion is going to start pumping out the ATP left and right. All right, so let's take a look here. The role of the circulatory system is basically to connect all of the other systems and their parts together through the transport of blood, right? Organs are in fixed positions in our body. They can't move. My brain stays in my skull, my heart in my chest, my stomach and my intestines in my abdominal area. Right? If my brain has to communicate to my stomach or my kidneys, which are in my abdominal cavity, the brain doesn't start sliding down through my neck and, excuse me, heart, as I go down to the chest, I got to talk to the kidneys or the stomach. It's stuck there. So what it does is it makes molecules called hormones that it dumps into the blood, and the hormones enter those organs because the blood can reach everywhere in our body, right? So that's basically what it is. Its job is to share materials that are produced by the various systems and organs in our body. Through the circulation of blood, we can share things like proteins, hormones, nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, waste, right? Good and bad things. The bad things go to areas of the body which will release them, like carbon dioxide going to the lungs so we can breathe it out. Waste, metabolic waste, going to the kidneys so we can pee it out, as well as all the good things like the glucose and the oxygen, which have to make their way to the various cells. All right, we cannot have all this specialization without a way of sharing it, and that's what the circulatory system allows us to do. All right, so any circulatory system or system of circulation has three essential components. There's a pump. Something has to be the driving force that moves the fluid throughout the body or whatever it is you're talking about, right? So the pump, of course, is the heart. in grade 10, I talk about the heart being the hardest working organ in the body. It never stops. You're sleeping, you're out cold, it's still going. If it stops, you stop, right? So the heart's very, very important. So it is the pump. It's a muscular organ made of cardiac muscle. Cardiac or coronary always means heart, right? A little bit of etymology for you. So it's made of cardiac muscle and it never stops. Hardest working organ in the body. Its job is to move the blood around the body. All right? The next thing, we have to have a fluid. Now, a fluid can be a liquid or a gas. In our case, it's a liquid. Blood is a liquid. So the pump moves a fluid called blood. So I drew a red drop of blood here to remind us that blood is the fluid. And then we need vessels, right? So we need the ductwork, the tubes that the fluid moves throughout the body. So here you can see I've drawn an artery and a vein, all right? So we have blood vessels that run all throughout our body. In fact, our body has, and you may not believe this, it has, if I could take all of your blood vessels and make one continuous line, because we know the blood vessels branch out as they go throughout our body, kind of like a tree. If I could take the blood vessels in the average adult body and make just one continuous, unbranched, linear blood vessel, how long do you think that would be? You know, from our school down to the 401, would it be from our school down to the water? Would it reach the US? Right? Or would it only reach the wall of our room? How far would that go? The answer to that question is, it would go almost 2 times around the world, inside of your body, right? That's 96 to 97,000 kilometers of blood vessels in your body, right? Now think about this. We said the human body has 100 trillion cells, right? 100 trillion is this. There's 100, there's 100,000, there's 100 million, there's 100 billion, there's 100 trillion. That's how many cells in your body, the average adult body. The furthest any of those cells can be away from a blood vessel is 1 cell away, right? So that would be like saying, if this is a cell and there's not a blood vessel, like a capillary or an artery or vein next to it, then it's beside this one. If this was another cell, then it has to run here, right? So if it's not running beside this cell, it's running beside the cell that's next to it. And when you have 100 trillion cells like that running through your body, then that kind of accounts for why there's so much, blood vessels and so great of a length of blood vessels in one compact body. 96,000 kilometers, not meters, kilometers, right? The components of blood. I've drawn the 4 components down here, all right? So for the components of blood, there's 4 of them. The first one are the red blood cells. Red blood cells. All right? Now, red blood cells, their name is, scientific name, right, if you want to sound smart, is erythrocytes. Red blood cells are called erythrocytes. Now, see the cytes on the end? That means cell. All right? So if you go to university and you study cytology, cyto is cell, right? We have osteocytes. These are bone cells. We have hepatocytes, liver cells, right? Erythrocytes, again, that cytes means it's a type of cell. In this case, it's a red blood cell. Now, the job of the red blood cell is to carry oxygen, right? So oxygen connects to hemoglobin, which is inside of the red blood cell. Red blood cells are the stars of our PowerPoint slideshow here. We can see the red blood cells are all here. I did my best job trying to draw one out, but you can see them in the background here of the video. They look like spare tires from cars. They're fat and puffy on the outside, around the outside, but where the rim is in the middle, it's flattened a bit. Just like these, right? I try to get that across here. It's a 2-dimensional drawing. I'm an amazing artist, but maybe not that amazing. Anyway, So they look like red spare tires from cars if they're healthy, kind of puffy on the outside, flat in the middle. And inside of their structure, there's a protein called hemoglobin. Now, some more etymology. Hemoglobin. Hemo or heme in a word, the etymology of that is blood. All right? So a hemophiliac is someone that loves to bleed. That's a genetic disorder we talked about earlier on this semester. Hemoglobin is the molecule inside of the red blood cells that allows it to carry oxygen. So the oxygen is carried by the hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin is inside of the red blood cells. At the center of hemoglobin, oddly, is iron. I'll put Fe there because that's its chemical symbol off the periodic table. Iron is at the center of the hemoglobin molecule. And oxygen loves hemoglobin. Sometimes people don't have enough iron in their diets. Maybe they're a strict vegan and they haven't educated themselves, right? We get iron in a lot of red meats and proteins, but they're eating just fruits and vegetables and not getting a lot of that. Without the iron, the hemoglobin is not made properly, and oxygen carrying capacity of the blood is greatly decreased. And if you need oxygen to make energy, you can tell what happens to these people, right? Their energy values go down. And if it gets too extreme, they go under the minimal viable amount of ATP they can have in their body and they die, right? So you got to be careful. The next type of cell are leukocytes or white blood cells, and that's this guy right here. I'll put white blood cell here, and I'm going to write leukocyte up above them. I'll erase this. Now, white blood cell is also known as a leukocyte, and again, there's that ending. That site ending means cell. Osteocyte, bone cell; hepatocyte, liver cell; leukocyte, white blood cell. All right? There are several different types of white blood cells. There's eosinophils, basophils, macrophages. We talk more about this when we take Bio 12, right? It's amazing stuff for our immune system. So leukocytes, the beginning of that, there is a disease, a form of cancer where our white blood cells divide rapidly and out of control. And that's called leukemia because of the leukocytes that are rapidly dividing. Their cell cycle gets all messed up and they just divide and divide and divide and never do their adult function. The function of the leukocyte, it helps us with their immunity. These things circulate around our body and they can reach everywhere because our blood can reach everywhere, right? 97,000 kilometers of blood vessels inside of us. And so they go around constantly looking for pathogens. A pathogen causes a pathology, right? So it is a disease-causing organism. Could be a bacteria or a virus or a type of fungus or something. Or it could be something like a nematode, whatever it happens to be. But the leukocytes circulate throughout the body and they're in charge of your immune response. They basically check out everybody, and all your cells have like a badge, like a protein badge on the outside of them that says, hey, I belong to this body. In my cell, they all have a Mr. Mac badge on the outside of their cells. And these guys will circulate around. As long as I have that badge that says Mr. Mac, right? The same way you guys, when you're in class, have the St. Mary badge on your shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. If I see that, I know you belong there. If someone comes in that shouldn't be there, maybe they have the D for Dunbarton or the P for Pickering High or whatever it is, then what happens is I go over and I question them. Hey, you shouldn't be here. What are you doing here? Right? Diseases have a different protein on their outer surface that doesn't match up with the one that belongs to me. And so when a bacteria gets inside of me that shouldn't be there, my white blood cells recognize that. Hey, you don't have the same patch as us. You better get out of here. And what it will do is it will attack them. And again, various different types of white blood cells attack in various different types of ways. Grade 12 bio, we go into detail into that, how they do the different sorts of attacks. Anyway, that's it. And the word disease means not to be at ease. You're not feeling easy. Life is not good. It's dis-ease, right? So that's where the word disease comes from. The etymology just flying today. The next thing are these two little guys right here. These are platelets. And these are cell fragments, and what they do is if your blood vessels get damaged, so you get hit hard or there's some sort of trauma that breaks the wall of a blood vessel, well, we don't want blood leaving active circulation and flooding the tissues, right? That's internal bleeding. So what happens is platelets go by and they smooth out that area and they repair it, right? You can imagine a blood vessel like this, if it had a hole in its wall like that because of some sort of trauma, got hit or cut or something like that, the platelets are in charge of putting in that Band-Aid, so eventually it is repaired again. And blood is not leaving through, there's no hole anymore, so blood is not leaving through that hole, right? So that's what platelets do. They're responsible for blood clotting. They seal the breaks in blood vessels. Hemophilia Hemo is blood, philia is to love. Hemophiliacs are called hemophiliacs because it seems they love to bleed, right? What happens with hemophiliacs is the platelets do not run the blood clotting, so when there is a hole in the blood vessel, blood just continues to exit outward, right? So it seems like they love to bleed. It's a genetic condition. It's sex-linked. It's on the X chromosome. I think we discussed it a few times in class earlier this year. And then the last part is the watery waves here. This is the liquid component of blood, right? I always think of blood as like a stew, right? We've got our pieces of beef in the stew. That's the, the red meat. That's our red blood cells. Potatoes, they're white, like the white blood cells. And then we have our carrots in there as well in the stew, right? And that's the platelets. But you need the broth. You need the liquid. These things can't circulate around the body without being in the fluid. So this is the liquid part of blood. And plasma makes up 55% of the blood, right? So it makes up these are 45% of what's in your blood. Plasma is 55%. And plasma itself is 90% water. The other parts of plasma are some dissolved gases and proteins and things like that. But the bulk of plasma is water, and it makes up over half of what your blood actually is. All right? When you see a hospital show and they've got the patient there and the bag they attach to him is red, they're getting a blood transfusion. They're getting all of these things. When you see the clear bag, what that is, that's a saline solution. It's water and some salt, basically. And it's mimicking plasma. That water and salt will match up with the water and dissolve solute in your blood, and then they can put a drug in that bag and it feeds into your blood, right? So here's a picture here showing our blood components. Plasma is right here, 55%. The white blood cells and platelets are less than 1%. And then our red blood cells make up 45%, right? If you took a drop of blood for about every 500 of these, there'll be one of these. In a patient with leukemia, there'll be way more of these, right? So all you got to do is put some blood on a slide. If you see a whole bunch of these and only a couple of these, person's fine. If you think they have leukemia and you take that blood drop, put it on the slide, and there's a lot of these, right? Almost equal numbers of these and these, that can be a problem. Actually, not even quite equal numbers, just a higher number. You'll notice it. So here's a blood vessel here, an artery that they've cut in half, and you can see here's our red blood cells, there's our platelets, the little pink fragments, and then our white blood cells here. An interesting thing, white blood cells have a nucleus, right? I can see it right here. They're kind of odd-looking nuclei. They're not the same as the ones that you normally think of, like the one single circle in the cell. Red blood cells are the only cells in our body with no nucleus. They are basically empty tanks designed to carry oxygen. So our red blood cells, they don't have any nuclei. And in fact, in every couple of seconds, so listen to the snap, in that time, a second or two, your body has replaced about 1 million red blood cells. They're made by your bone marrow, right? Your body looks after that independently, autonomously we call it, because, well, it's too important of a job to leave you in charge of. So red blood cells last about 90 to 120 days. So they got to constantly be replaced because while they do a really important job, they carry oxygen and we need that ATP. Here's a slide here that shows a microscopic picture. There's a red blood cell here. White blood cells are here. And then of course our platelets are these little fragments. Circulation circuits. So I can remember one time watching a baseball game with my brother-in-law. Now my brother-in-law, he's a gentleman from Montreal. And a home run was hit. We were watching the Jays because that's my favorite team. He liked the Expos back in the day. Montreal used to have a Major League Baseball team. Hopefully they get one back again. And a home run is hit. And I'm going, oh, awesome, a home run. And he goes, circuit. And I'm like, circuit? What do you like, circuit? He goes, well, basically, yeah. What a circuit is, it's a loop, right? French people call a home run a circuit. Hey, circuit, right? You hit a home run. Think about it. The batter is at home plate. There's first base, second base, third base. If you hit the ball over the fence, you get to do what? You get to go around a circuit. You get to run around a loop, right? So that's the connection. So when we talk about circulatory system circuits or circulation circuits, we're talking about loops, a path that starts in one spot and eventually comes back to where it started. All right? I hope we get the Expos back. That'd be great. Get a rivalry going between Montreal and Toronto like there's not one already. So your blood circulates through three different circuits or loops. The first one is the pulmonary circuit. All right, so here's our heart. Our heart is a main player in all three of these circuits. So I'll draw the pulmonary circuit in blue. Your heart pumps blood out to the lungs, which are on both sides of the heart. So I'll put a little L here for lungs. And this is our heart. Right? The lungs breathe in the oxygen. So oxygen poor blood goes out to the lungs, but it comes back in, nice and red, oxygen infused, and it's just a loop. Out to the lungs, breathe in the O2, back to the heart. More blood enters the heart, out to the lungs, pick up oxygen, back to the heart. So this is the pulmonary circuit, all right? Our second circuit, and I'll try to draw it nice and neat here. I'll probably make a mess of it, but you'll just have to live with that. Oh, this is going to be terrible. Our second circuit is between the heart and the rest of the body. And that circuit is called the systemic circuit. The heart pumps that oxygen-rich blood out to the body. The body then uses up that oxygen and sends the blood back to the heart. So that's the systemic circuit. Oxygen-rich blood from the heart out to the body. The cells of the body eat up the oxygen, and the oxygen depleted or poor blood comes back to the heart. That's a loop. That's a circuit. It's called the systemic circuit. The last one is the coronary circuit. Now, the coronary circuit is the heart pumping blood to the heart itself. So what happens is the blood has coronary arteries that come down the sides of it like this, and it feeds the heart muscle. And so what happens is the heart pumps blood out, it feeds the muscle, and then that oxygen depleted blood, because the heart muscle ate up the oxygen, returns back to the heart. So it's the heart feeding itself oxygen-rich blood. And that is called the coronary circuit. All right? When someone has a heart attack, it's because one of these blood vessels that feeds the heart muscle has a blockage, and now blood carrying oxygen and glucose can't reach those cells, so they can't make energy. So what happens is, let's say there's a blockage right here. So if that's our blockage, right, this area of the heart here that is fed by this blood vessel, it starts to die. If it can't make energy, we're just like a TV. Pull the plug on a TV, it dies. It can't access energy. Block the delivery of blood, you're blocking oxygen and glucose, no ATP, no energy, no life. These cells here will start to die. What'll happen sometimes, and I'll enlarge this, you'll hear about people getting bypasses, right? Bypass surgery, a double bypass, a quadruple bypass, a triple bypass. Basically, and our heart, this is a Valentine heart, our heart doesn't have the shape. You're going to see the shape of our heart tomorrow. So let's say here's our blood vessel here, right? They're coming down, branching out. So let's say this vessel right here gets blocked, right? We'll put it in here. Something gets lodged in there, and now blood flow to this area like we had before is not happening. What they'll do is they'll go and remove an artery from your leg, and they'll build a bridge. And they'll put it in and sew it in right there and there. And what happens is now the blood can come down. It goes here. Instead of hitting the blockage, it goes around it in that little bridge that we made around the blockage. So if the blockage can't be removed, we build a bridge over it called a bypass. And that's what a bypass surgery is. If you have one blockage, that is a bypass surgery. If you have two blockages, you need a double bypass. So another little bridge will be built here to go around that. Triple bypass, quadruple bypass, right? So that's where you hear about bypass surgery and blockages and heart attacks. It all relates to coronary circuit circulation. So if we look here, here's a diagram here. There's the heart between the two lungs. You can see the network of arteries that lead out from the heart and the network of veins that come back to the heart, right? So the arteries go out to the lungs, grab some oxygen, the veins bring it back to the heart, oxygen-rich blood ready to be pumped out to the rest of the body. There's our systemic circuit. So here's our heart here in the middle, and you can see it actually shows both the pulmonary circuit, because here's our lungs, and here's the network of vessels that would lead up to our head and shoulders and down to our abdominal area and our legs, right? Systemic is all over our body. Even though I didn't draw into the legs, you can assume it goes there. And there are blood vessels there that feed the heart, right? These are the coronary arteries and such. All right, we'll do the heart, but the parts of the heart and blood flow through the heart I'm going to save for tomorrow, right? Good luck sleeping tonight. I know the suspense of knowing the parts of the heart and blood flow through the heart is going to be on the utmost of your mind here. But we'll just introduce what the heart is. It's the major organ of the circulatory system, right? It's that pump that keeps blood going throughout your body. It's the hardest working organ in the body. It never stops. There are several layers of muscle that make it up, and we'll just get into those and then we'll call it a day. The myocardium. Myocardium. Whenever you see cardium, we know is heart. Myo is muscle. So if you see the word muscle, a little more etymology for you. If you see the word myo, it relates to muscle. And we can see there the thick muscular walls of the heart. Then we have the endocardium. The endocardium, again, cardium means related to the heart, and endo is the inner lining. Exo is outside, endo is inside. So this is the inner lining of the heart. And then on the outside, we have the pericardium. Cardium again meaning heart. Peri is outside, right? If I have a shape in elementary school, you would have had to measure the perimeter, and the perimeter is the distance around the outside. Perimeter, pericardium. It's the outer lining of the heart. All right? So we'll get into the chambers of the heart and that stuff tomorrow. I'm going to put some diagrams on EDSB. All right? They might already be there by the time you see this. And that's it. Make sure you get the diagrams. I hope this all made sense today. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, fill in the comment section below this video, or reach out to me through EDSB if you're in my class. Hope everything was clear. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.